Call it Trump's election denier trifecta on the Arizona ballot. The Republican contenders for Secretary of State, Attorney General, and Governor in Arizona have all loudly echoed Trump's election lies, and they continue to spread disinformation about voting just 10 days before the midterms. That disinformation, in part, has led to a series of voter intimidation issues across the state. Secretary of State and gubernatorial candidate Katie Hobbs, who will join me in just a moment, has referred a total of 10 potential voter intimidation complaints to law enforcement. In some of these instances, voters are being photographed, filmed, and followed as they drop off their early ballots at drop boxes, behavior that's actually being encouraged by some Republicans in the state. Arizona State Senator Kelly Townsend told residents back in May, "I have been so pleased to hear all of you vigilantes out there that want to camp out at these drop boxes, right? So do it. Do it." More recently, the Republican nominee for Secretary of State, Mark Finchem, has defended this vigilantism. Here's President Obama tonight seeming to reference these incidents.
If they're telling supporters, you got to stand outside polling places armed with guns and dressed in tactical gear, you know, that's the kind of thing that ends up getting people hurt.
At least one Republican, not from Arizona, is fighting back. Liz Cheney's Political Action Committee is urging voters to reject Republicans Kari Lake and Mark Finchem due to their election denialism.
You have a candidate for governor, Kari Lake. You have a candidate for Secretary of State, Mark Finchem, both of whom have said that they will only honor the results of an election if they agree with it. And if you care about the survival of our republic, we cannot give people power who will not honor elections.
And joining me now is Katie Hobbs, the current Arizona Secretary of State and the Democratic candidate for governor. Secretary Hobbs, thank you so much for making time for us. I'd like to start with just what we saw this last week. You had a federal judge in Phoenix reject an attempt to stop these Dropbox watchers. Aside from referring these cases to law enforcement, how else is your office assuring voters that they can safely cast their vote?
Well, I think the publicity, the level of publicity that these complaints have reached has helped to inform voters of their rights, make sure that they know that they are able to cast their ballot free from harassment and intimidation, and that there's a recourse to report these incidents if they experience them, and that there are other avenues that they can return their ballot if they feel intimidated at a certain location. But it is imperative that these investigative bodies act quickly to address this, because there's just 10 days left in the election, and the court's made it clear they're not going to stop it now, and so we need quick action from the investigative authorities.
What's at stake here in your state's races? I mean, if any one of these Republican election deniers wins in your state, what does that mean? And is that being crystallized enough for the voters of your state?
You know, Arizona has been ground zero for so much level of activity based on Trump's big lie. We had the Maricopa County fraud that played out for a good 6 months here. We've been ground zero for so much, and Arizonans are well aware of what's at stake here. And they also are tired of it. They're ready to move on and focus on issues that really that are urgent, that we need leaders to address them instead of continuing to dwell on this election of the past. But what's clear is that these folks are running at the behest of the former president. He's interested in folks who are going to be loyal to him instead of the will of the voters. And there's the potential for them to do real harm and actually overturn the will of the voters in future elections if they're elected. And so we have to stop them.
Can I ask you about the break-in at your campaign office this week? I mean, what have you learned about it? Because your opponent, Kari Lake, said that the break-in was staged, and I want to give you a chance to respond to that.
I think it says a lot about her lack of leadership, that her first response to this incident in this incredibly vitriolic political climate where we're seeing political violence across the spectrum, that her first response was to accuse me of faking it. This was absolutely not a fake break-in. It's being investigated by police. A person was arrested, and her first response was not to denounce this kind of activity, but to call me a liar. And you know, this is just another instance where it shows her disqualification to be a leader of our state. Instead of calling out this kind of political violence that we're seeing, the voter intimidation that we're seeing at drop boxes that you mentioned, she is continuing to egg it on.
Can I ask about the debate here for a moment? You refused to debate Kari Lake. Can you talk to us about your decision and what you say in response to the critics who say that was the wrong move? We've called out candidates on the Republican side who have refused to debate their Democrats in other races across this country. Why did you not want to debate her head to head?
You know, her entire platform for running for governor has boiled down to Trump's big lie and her furtherance of that big lie, accusing me of fraud in the last election, and then continuing to gin up these kind of political attacks. And I just simply am not going to give her a bigger stage to do that. And I've chosen to make my case directly to voters in town hall style interviews. And that's the way we're going to continue for the next 10 days.
Are you at all surprised by how close this race is, given the fact that she is an election denier and gone down that road of lying about the 2020 election, making that the central issue of her campaign?
Arizona is a battleground state, and so no, I'm not surprised at all. We knew that it was going to be a tough fight and a close race. When I won in 2018, it was by less than 1%. Joe Biden's margin of victory here was less than 0.5%. And so it's a fight to the finish. We're not taking a single vote for granted. And we're going to continue to make the case to voters of how dangerous Kari Lake is, how bad she will be for the state of Arizona, and that I'm the right person to lead the state into the future.
So much of our conversations, rightfully so, have been about election denialism and our democracy and the threats to voters. I do want to give you a chance to talk about your platform here, the issues that you feel matter the most to your voters. What do you think is the most important issue in front of your constituents day in and day out?
Well, I think it is very clear that democracy is on the ballot, and I certainly don't want to minimize that as an issue. It's something I talk to voters about every day. But Arizonans are really feeling the pinch from inflation. We've been hit really hard in Arizona, largely but because of rising housing prices. And so Arizonans are feeling the pinch. It's why we've put out a plan to help them put money back in their pocket with tax breaks on everyday items, some proposals that would put Arizonans back to work by expanding access to childcare and tax credit for pursuing career and technical education, and an income tax cut for 800,000 Arizonans with a child tax credit. Those are the kinds of plans we're putting out to help ensure Arizonans that we have answers to the economic struggles they're feeling right now because of inflation. Kari Lake's plans do nothing to address inflation. In fact, economic experts have looked at them and said it would make it worse and would actually cripple cities in their ability to provide public safety for their residents. Arizonans are concerned about public education and making sure that we're investing dollars in the classroom to keep teachers. We're losing teachers every day in our classrooms. And Arizonans are concerned about access to reproductive health care and making sure we protect safe and legal abortion in the state of Arizona.
Before you go, Secretary Hobbs, can I get your thoughts on the attack on Speaker Pelosi's husband, Paul? What did you make of that development this week?
In the climate that we are in, that I've already talked about, the incredible level of vitriol and these so-called political leaders who keep ginning it up and keep, they're not denouncing it. And by not denouncing it, they're promoting it. And this is just a horrible, horrible instance of that. And we need leaders across the political aisle everywhere to denounce this kind of violence. And it is the silence from the Republicans on this has been deafening.
All right, Arizona Secretary of State and gubernatorial candidate Katie Hobbs, thank you so much for your time this evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.